Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney. I'm joined here with Bob Stewart, ladies and gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chad Himes. It's like a great injury. This is awesome. Today, we're talking about the incredibly riveting, the incredibly sexy, the amazing. This is the late night love songs. This is 98.9 Smooth Jazz, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about accountability.
Yay.
Accountability, what? Everybody enter the call. Why does this podcast have such a high drop-off rate?
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's because nobody likes the word accountable.
Nope.
We don't like to be accountable. We don't like to hold other people accountable, right?
That's no fun.
But at the end of the day, we need our organization to be accountable. We need to keep our promises. We need to live up all these things. Like accountability is about us. How do we as an individual or as a leader show up accountable? Are we being the person that our dreams require? Accountability is about our organization, them. Are we helping them be the best version of themselves? Are we helping them live up to their potential? Or do we have the wrong people? Have we been surrounded by unaccountable people? I like to say that nobody's an amazing leader of marginal people. Warren Buffett says sometimes your time would be better spent finding a new boat than continuing to try to bail yourself out of the one you have. Some people are just not accountable, but when you find the right people and you step up as an accountable person yourself, you can have an organization that together is accountable. But it requires you to be one, Bob, you to be accountable, Chad, me to be accountable, us as a group, and then it all works out. So as we dive into this subject, we have some really cool, interesting stories today and things we want to talk about. Bob, what does accountability mean to you? What does that word mean?
I think it means that I'm going to kind of deliver on my promises or do the things that I said I was going to do. That's how I would personally look at accountability from an organizational standpoint. It's those same things, right? That everybody's kind of doing what they say they're going to do. But to me, it builds and fosters trust, right? I know if somebody tells me that they're going to get that thing done, I can go out and make those promises to other people, right? Because I trust that that person's going to be accountable to their word and what they said was going to get done. So I don't know, at a really high level, that's kind of what I think about accountability. Chad, what about you?
Well, since you just stole my answer, because I think you hit it right on the head with that one, Bob. I'm going to give you the dictionary definition of accountability, right? Because
Boring.
Yeah, it is, except it hits it right well here. It's an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. So, Bob, you're saying it's doing what we said we were going to do, putting that out there. And what we're looking at here is it's that obligation, doing what we said we're going to do, or the willingness to then accept the responsibility. So it's the other side of it as well that comes with it when we're wrong. Ben, go around the room and keep going. What about you when it comes to accountability?
Wouldn't it be easier and wouldn't it be a more accepted term if we called accountability our promise? Right? Straight from our friend Mike Hicks, right, who loves to use the word the promise, right? But isn't it something easier to keep? If you said, hey, are you accountable? Well, sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. If I said, hey, do you keep your promises?
All the time.
That's a different word, right? Maybe we should just pivot and call this the Promise Podcast today, because that's what it's about. Are you able to keep your promises?
And Ben, you bring that up, and aren't you slower to give your promise on something? You might just, this accountability term that's out there. Yeah, I'll take accountability or I'll be accountable to it. Yet you can be sure I don't promise all that often the same way that I'll take accountability on something. A promise really becomes almost that level above. That's the true accountability, like you're saying.
Early in your career, you feel good by saying yes to people. And then as you get busier and busier, what you really are doing is you're coming out unaccountable and you're breaking promises to people. So after time, you start learning, you just start saying, actually, no, or not now, or maybe later, right? Because you don't want to break your promises.
There's some times, Ben, where you've asked me, like, you've said to me, hey, will you do this thing? And I'll go, oh, yeah, I'll do that thing. And then you'll say, seriously, are you going to do that thing? And I'll say, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. Now that you ask it like that, you're basically making me promise I'm going to do that thing, at which point I'm like, okay, that's another level of That's interesting, Chad.
And you teach your kids that promise means something.
Yeah.
When they promise they're going to do something, we really hold them to that. Yet accountability, we sometimes just let people even off the hook ourselves because we don't want to be the bad guy who's holding people accountable in certain situations, but we'll always help people hold to their promises.
Yeah, we have to ask ourselves, are we accountable to ourselves? Are we accountable to others? And also, are we accountable for the mistakes that we make, for the poop that we step in, for the things we inadvertently say, for the feelers that we hurt, right? The hearts that we break, whatever that might be. Are we accountable for that or not? And as we dove into this a little deeper, Chad reminded me of a fable from our childhood. Why don't you just recite that for us, Chad?
Sure, I'll just read it out for you here. It says, once upon a time, an old man spread rumors that his neighbor was a thief. As a result, the young man was arrested. Days later, the young man was proven innocent. And after being released, the man felt humiliated as he walked to his home. The young man sued the old man for wrongly accusing him. In court, the old man told the judge they were just comments and they didn't harm anyone. And the judge, before passing sentence on the case, said to the old man, I want you to write down all the things you said about him on a piece of paper. I want you to cut them up, and on your way home, throw the pieces of paper out. Tomorrow, come back and hear your sentence. On the next day, the judge told the old man, before receiving sentence today, I need you to go out and gather all those pieces of paper that you threw out yesterday. And the old man said, there's no way I can do that. The wind must have spread them by now, and I won't know where to find them. And the judge replied, the same way your simple comments destroyed the honor of a man and will not be able to ever fix it. The old man, realizing his mistake, asked for his forgiveness.
So the lesson in there, a fewfold. One, we have to understand that our actions and our words have consequences and they can hurt people. And two, it was only after he was able to realize how what he did could not be undone, right? That he was able to sit back and say, I get it. I understand. And then he apologized.
Yes. Asked for forgiveness after the fact. He took accountability once he finally realized it.
When I think about accountability, I think about the David Goggins who's been on our podcast before, right?
Yeah.
I think about other people in the military, Navy SEALs, and the tough ones. And Jocko, the author of Extreme Ownership, comes to mind. And Bob, I know that you know Jocko and you read that story. Tell us a little bit about his story.
Yeah, so he was a Navy SEAL. He led a Navy SEAL team, and basically what happened is they had an operation go bad, and his Navy SEAL team had stormed a building that was supposedly under attack by enemy troops. And as they're coming in right at the last minute, Jocko realizes that what they were entering into was a blue-on-blue situation, basically friendly fire. And they stopped the attack, but there had already been some casualties. And in the military, a friendly fire incident is one of the most blunderous things that happens in combat. And so it was a big deal. And he was in a lot of trouble. And they did an investigation. And during the investigation, it was uncovered that there was a lot of mistakes made throughout that whole process by a number of different people. And so it was, the planning and during the operation, and there was just a number of mistakes. And so when they brought these guys in and ultimately brought, Jocko Willink in to sit him down, and to interview him, they expected him to kind of start passing that blame around. And he just said, no, this was all on me. I didn't necessarily do each of these mistakes, or I didn't have my hand in everything there, but this was my operation. I was the leader. And I think it's been a while since I've read the book, but in the story, it was like he was basically preparing to lose his rank and to be, busted down a couple of levels, but he actually earned the trust of his superiors going in and just fully taking the blame, even though it wasn't really all his blame. So, it's the book is Extreme Ownership. That's obviously one of the more extreme examples of taking ownership. When he could potentially have ended his career and there was lives lost. But he stood up as the leader and said, no, I'm the one that's accountable for everything that happened under my command.
And his superiors were blown away because they didn't expect him to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little sad actually to like most people would not expect the other person to take 100% ownership, and by doing so, like you shock them.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson. You know, one of the phrases that we've used in our companies, Chad, is leaders give away 100% of the credit while always taking 100% of the blame.
Say that again for us, Ben.
Leaders give away 100% of the credit while always taking 100% of the blame. That is actually the leader's job, which sucks because some people say, I want to get into leadership because I want to get recognition, right? Or I'm not going to be the one getting in trouble. That's not the job of the leader. The job of the leader is to say, you did it, congrats, never get any recognition, right? And then when there's a problem, say, that's on me. That's on me right here. That's my fault, right? Now, Chad, you're more of a sports guy than me, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to believe that. But accountability sometimes is when somebody else realizes that they made a mistake and they own up to it. And how many people in history have ever had a perfect game?
Wow, you're going to put me on the spot. It's probably like 22, maybe 23 right now at the most.
Yeah, not very many,
no,
right?
it's not very common.
Well, one guy, Armando, he had a chance at it, didn't he?
Armando Galarraga. It's June 2nd. It's 2010. I absolutely remember watching this game. He's a pitcher for the Tigers. So, you know, put yourself in the situation. You're in the stands. You got the hot dog. I know that's why you're at the game, you know, the popcorn, or you're sitting up in the box paying no attention, whatever it might be for you, Ben. Bob and I might be paying attention to the game a little bit here.
We're out in the right field seats.
There you go. We got the good bleacher seats there, right? And Armando was pitching the perfect game. And the perfect game is nobody safely reaches first base. No errors, no walks. You strike everybody out or forcing out a ground ball or a fly ball out.
Sounds like my dating career.
Nobody ever makes it to first base. Yes, there you go. All right, so Armando was going for the perfect game. It's one of those things you don't talk about either. It's the jinx in baseball. And there was 2 outs in the 9th inning when he made the pitch, and there was a ground ball that was hit, and the runner was out by 2 steps. I mean, I remember screaming at the TV.
I don't know if it was 2 steps,
It
but
was
it was a
massive,
ways. It was a ways. Yeah,
right?
it was pretty obvious.
Jim Joyce was the first base umpire, called the guy safe. I mean, we always joke about a baseball umpire being, you know, blind or they can't. What a horrible call. There was nobody in the stadium that thought he made that call correct.
One of the all-time blunders in Major League umpire history.
Yes.
Really is.
And there's nothing he can do. He can't then all of a sudden go, oh, I mean, he's out. No, he called him safe, put him on first base. Armando got the next batter out. And it went down in history as an imperfect game because he didn't get the perfect game. Now, here's the thing. After the game, Jim Joyce walked right up to Armando and said, I'm wrong. I cost you the perfect game. He goes, I made the wrong call in there. Wasn't even close. You didn't achieve what's one of the greatest things a Major League Baseball pitcher could ever achieve. And it's my fault. I got the call wrong.
What did Armando say about that?
You know, it's amazing if you hear him in the interviews after, what he had said about it was, I forgive him. He said, I can't make him feel any worse than he feels already for what he's done, and moved on from it, actually gave him a hug. I mean, that's the umpire taking accountability to it. And then Armando listening to the episode we did about, you know, forgiveness and being able to just let that go and saying, it is what it is, and there's nothing that can be done about it today.
There's something really powerful. Most of the time when people kind of own up to their mistake and you know, and look to be accountable, there's been some reflection, right? It's like a period of time has gone by, and now you feel bad about it, the weight of it over time. But Joyce did it immediately,
moments
after the game, right? I mean, that shows a lot of character for that guy to come out and be able to admit that mistake. And I mean, the gravity of it was pretty big deal, right? Having only been 23 perfect games in Major League history over 150 years of baseball. So, yeah, I mean, that's a really great example of accountability.
Kind of a more recent thing that popped in my head was in 2018, Elon Musk made the decision that he was going to waive all of his compensation. No bonuses, no salary, no stock options. He's going to work 100% for free. But with one condition, I'm going to put a big goal out there. And let's just pretend the numbers was Tesla was at a $10 billion valuation. And he said, as soon as it gets to 100 billion, 10 times the size, right? Then I want this reward. And he was willing to bet everything on that, all of his compensation for that simple prize. That's an accountable thing for a leader to do, to bet on themselves. And when asked about it, he said something simple. He said, the reason I did that, and the reason that this is important to me personally, is that there are some pretty big things that I want to do. That was enough for him. That was what was driving him, right? He wanted to go out, and he has to get it to that size. For him to accomplish his goals of getting us to Mars and building the perfect electronic car and solving issues in the brain and
boring under Los Angeles to create fast
Train.
transportation.
And that really awesome flamethrower that he made. Like, for him to keep doing all that stuff, he's got to deliver on those results.
Can somebody explain the truck, though? That thing just...
We'll have to see it.
He got a smile on his face when you just said it.
Yeah, we might have to see the new Tesla truck live. You know, we shared a couple stories about accountability. But let's bring it back to a lesson for ourselves and our organization. Let's talk about the things that limit, reduce, or eliminate accountability in an organization. And we'll share. Not going to believe this, Chad.
You got a list?
A list.
Yay, a list.
Of things that really reduce the amount of accountability in your world. The first one is we lack clarity. There's clarity missing around what someone's priorities are, what their tasks are, job description. And because of that lack of clarity, people tend to put blame on others and exhibit more unaccountability, the lack of accountability, because there isn't that clarity.
Yeah, if I don't know what's expected of me, right? I don't know what the outcome we're trying to go after is. Probably pretty easy to shirk away from that accountability, right?
Well, Ben talks as one of the roles of a leader is to be really clear on those few things that the person's supposed to be doing. And boy, how many of us have that task list that's, well, I got 20, 30, 40 projects that we're going to just hide behind half-assing all of them and saying we're getting somewhere. Whereas we've talked about in the past, it's limiting down to, well, what are those 4 things that you truly are responsible for to be accountable to? So yeah, there's a lot of people that just have no clarity to what they're working on.
But we have to understand that real self-accountability would be when you didn't have clarity, you would go seek it out. You would knock on the door. You would text, you would call, you would email. You say, what is my priority? I'm confused. I have 2 priorities. What is my job description? What does winning look like for me in this company? How can I perform? What can I do that's most important? That's accountability. You see unaccountable people say, well, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what was most important.
I didn't do anything.
I didn't hear from you. You didn't tell me what to do. You didn't give me my priorities. I sent you an email. You didn't respond. That is a lack of accountability. Another thing that limits accountability in our world is we spend too much time inspecting what people are doing and not enough time improving the results of what people do. Now, inspection is important. In fact, I say all the time, the lack of accounting means the lack of accountability. If you don't know your numbers, your results, your activities, you can't even be accountable. But it's easy for a leader to start pointing their fingers and saying, you didn't make your calls, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, instead of sitting back and saying, well, what can I do to help you? What got in your way? What stopped you from doing that? Remember, we need to move through inspection to improvement. Another item that really limits accountability is we give people meaningless, unimportant, unclear goals or priorities that people don't buy into. When somebody doesn't buy into it, You might be able to force compliance by threatening their job, but you aren't going to get commitment. You aren't going to get the passion that says, I would do this freaking job, whether or not you paid me or not. Pay me in 5 years, right? That's what Elon Musk said.
Bob, are you getting paid for this podcast?
In 5 years, Ben said.
Oh, okay, all right.
If we're hanging out in the park.
That is a commitment to a vision. It can't just be the company's goals. It can't just be the company's priorities. You have to say, this is what we're going to accomplish, and this is why it's important to you.
And I had this conversation with one of our clients recently, and they said, I can't get people to buy in. I can't get people on my team to buy into doing this thing. And I hadn't seen this yet. We hadn't talked about this yet, but I said, hey, listen, have you ever sat them down and tried to get their buy-in as a group? Like, to get them to be a part of the process. Like you're wanting them to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Have you ever sat down with them and maybe force a stupid thing and you guys figure out something better and you come up with a new 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Getting that group to participate in setting those standards and setting those goals, right? So they're not just these meaningful things that you dump on them, actually getting them to participate gives them some ownership in it, which leads them being more accountable to those goals.
I'm thinking the movie Major League. And I don't know, I always end up pulling a movie out of it, right? But the movie Major League. We've all laughed at it, all had a good time at that one. And the team's a disaster until what happens? The coach gives them all that purpose so that they have something to work towards. So that's what you're talking about here. When the team has no purpose and no vision, of course they stunk as a team. And then the leader's job is to change that.
Every great sports movie ever made had that same theme.
Yeah, but they didn't all have the girl that they peeled the pieces off and showed her in the bikini when it was done.
Or the Wild Thing song.
That's right. They didn't all have that.
Bob, what I love about your comment with that individual is he didn't get buy-in from the group. What else was probably missing? If he did that, he didn't reiterate the commitment, public and privately, on a regular basis.
On a regular basis, for sure.
A great company starts every meeting out with their mission, vision, values, their priorities, and their goals every time. Instead of you're like, oh my gosh, here goes Ben again talking about the vision and mission. Like, blah, blah, blah. I could recite that myself. That's good.
That's the point.
That's right. Because if you don't do that, if you don't consistently present priorities, goals, and commitments, you're going to get off track. Now, the only last thing that you could do that would really improve accountability, or that might be the reason why you don't have an accountable organization, is because you don't actively seek out feedback. You don't encourage it. You don't receive it well personally. You don't offer great feedback, so you don't create a culture of it. You don't offer it timely, so you can't remember all the details. The lack of amazing feedback creates an unaccountable organization. And in some ways, leaders, us, we avoid giving feedback because we don't like what happens after it.
We were doing a bunch of research for this, and I came across the mayor of New York City in the late 70s and through the mid 80s, Ed Koch. He would, every time he was out in public, he would meet his constituents and he would introduce himself as, hi, I'm Ed Koch. How am I doing? And that was his line he went to every single time, right? He was just consistently looking for feedback from his constituents, right? The people that he was leading. So I thought that was a really good example of just somebody who, look, he didn't have to ask for that. He was elected already, right? In that second term, he was already elected. It didn't matter, but that was how he introduced himself to everybody, just open to feedback.
Great point. So Ben, I want to go down this list one more time and get more thoughts from you still on this. You said, here are the 5 things for everybody listening at home. 1, no clarity. So we don't understand what we're supposed to be doing. Then you said inspection. We spend our time pointing out problems, relying on reports, things like that. Then we talked about meaningless, mandated goals that we don't have the buy-in on. Then we talked about commitments and forgetting the commitments that we made. And then we talked about people not seeking feedback or even avoiding feedback as they could. You're saying those are the 5 biggest things that you see that are giving us a lack of accountability.
in your organization for your own personal accountability, right? Why maybe people aren't being accountable to you. It probably revolves around some of those issues. But the good news is, Chad, is there things you can do about it.
We got to flip the coin. There's always the other side. Okay.
Here's what I know. Clarity creates action. When everybody knows exactly what's expected of them, they're more likely to be accountable. When there's clarity on goals, priorities, job descriptions, expectations, that creates action.
Got it.
Chad, I need this done today.
Kind of obvious.
Bob, I need this done tomorrow, right? I need you to do it personally. I need you to report back when you're done. There's no lack of clarity in that.
Not at all.
Right? The next thing that we need is feedback. See, feedback feeds accountability. It's critical that we as an organization practice, master, and deliver amazing quality feedback.
And be open to accepting feedback as well, because while we might be great at giving it without making people feel badly, we've got to be willing to hear it as well.
Yeah. And accountable people live on it.
Yes.
Unaccountable people are going to run away from it. They're going to place blame, whatever. That's okay. Get them out of your organization. Accountable people are going to say, thanks. I appreciate the feedback. I want to do better. Great people want to do a better job.
Okay. What else then, Ben?
Well, every meeting, every call, every face-to-face, every email, are you reviewing your commitments, your priorities, your expectations, your goals, your mission, your vision, your values?
As you mentioned, the people in your organization can recite them because they've heard you say it so many times.
You have clarity
that's-
on them.
And it's
right?
accountability you're bringing to them.
Yeah. And they know who's responsible for what, when it is due, and why. And here's the important part, why it's important to an organization.
Got it.
A lot of times we as leaders, we get going really quick and we forget to tell people why. But they'll work so much harder. If you just go back, I remember us having a technology issue a couple of years ago, and I went back to our team, Bob, and I said, you have to understand, if you do not fix this one problem, it's going to cost people jobs. We are going to lose customers. The company may not make it. I need you. I need you to figure this out. They never understood how important their role to the company was.
A lot of times in an organization, people just work in their box and they don't realize the ripple effect that their job today, right, has on people. I mean, it's, our customers, their livelihoods are on the line, right? In many cases, like their ability to put a roof over their kids' heads and food on the table. And so, us being able to make sure our people understand why they're doing what they do and how valuable that is to our customers, it's super important.
Yeah.
Hey, keep going, Ben.
Well, when you move from inspection to improvement, you're helping them understand not that they didn't do something, but how they could do more tomorrow, how they could do it better tomorrow. A good example would be, hey, Chad, you were supposed to make 100 calls today. How many did you get? And they say, well, I got 50. And you already knew that because you track it, you inspected it, and you're like, that's bad, you're bad, you suck. Right? That's not going to do anything. That's just going to be some manager pointing his fingers at you, right?
Sure.
When you rather say, Chad, I get it. Sometimes things happen. But what happened today specifically? What happened to you today where you were only able to live up to half, 50% of the commitment that you made when I thought we were super clear on our priorities on what you had to do? What happened? We were like, I'm glad you asked because I ended up dealing with 2 of these customer issues. And then you could dive in and say, don't you think that would be a better job for support or for repair or whatever your company? Don't you think that if you would have handed that over to them, they would have done a better job and you could have stuck to your commitment? The next time you have something like that, I want you to text me directly. I'll jump in on it. I'll make sure it gets to the right person. You stick to your commitment. Once you're done with your commitment, you can do whatever you want with our customers. But until then, you don't have a right to do that. You have to keep your promises.
We found a lot of times in our world where they, when you're doing that, when you're coming at things from that improvement perspective, Ben, and you're doing the inspection, you're seeing that there's something breaking down there. A lot of times you're going to take that and make an improvement somewhere else in the business. You're going to fix like the symptom, right? Or you're going to fix the cause, not the symptom, right? So so when you're constantly inspecting with the idea that you want to improve things, you'll find these problems that you can actually fix that don't then continue to show up for Chad, right? Like, because it could be that just day after day, he runs into that thing that somebody else could fix that now allows Chad to do his 100 calls.
Yeah, that constant improvement of the organization, right? Now, the only reason that you aren't going to get people to do what expected, people to receive feedback, to give feedback, for people to stick to their commitments, right, is because they don't have buy-in. They aren't bought into the goals. They don't understand how it'll help them. So they don't want to be held accountable to it. They don't understand the buy-in. But if you can do all of those things, you can have a more accountable organization. You can be like Armando. You could be like Jocko standing up in front of his group of SEALs and his commanders. You can be like the old man in the fable that finally understood the cause of his actions. Or you could be like Elon Musk, somebody that bet it all on his belief that he could do it, that he could accomplish it. Remember, nobody is an amazing leader of marginal people, and nobody's going to follow a marginal leader. This is on us to create a culture in our company of true accountability where everybody lives up to their potential.
And here at the Win, Make, Give podcast, we're going to be accountable to you and continue to deliver material like we did today, again and again. Meanwhile, we want you to visit us on Facebook at our Facebook group, Win, Make, Give. Come join us there where we're sharing behind-the-scenes photos, conversations, questions, and opportunities. Also, make sure you check us out at winmakegive.com to find out the latest news that's going on and how you can subscribe. Until the next episode, remember, wash your hands, and as always, do good.